The morning rush at Fort Hollow Base was as ordinary as ever. Boots pounding the concrete, orders shouted through crisp air, and the smell of strong coffee seeping through the canteen doors. At the counter stood Clara Hayes, silver hair tied in a neat bun, uniform apron dusted with coffee grounds. To most, she was invisible, just the coffee lady, but today, something in her trembling hands said otherwise. Because when the convoy rolled in, a tank unit returning from overseas, one man in particular froze the moment he saw her. His voice caught in his throat, his hand tightening on his cap. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening." Clara had been working at the base for nearly 6 years. Every morning she arrived before dawn, wiping down tables and humming softly to herself. Most soldiers barely noticed her beyond a polite nod. Some called her ma'am, others Miss C. She didn't mind. It was easier that way. But deep down, Clara carried a silence heavier than any military rank could bear, a past sealed beneath medals she never wore. She'd long ago packed away the uniform, the commendations, the photographs. Service came with a cost, and she'd paid it in full. So, when she heard the familiar thunder of engines that morning, she tried to ignore the way her heart began to ache, the rhythmic pulse of armored tracks echoing through her chest. The soldiers entered the canteen, laughing, tired, smelling of oil and victory. Among them was Major Daniel Kincaid, broad-shouldered, confident, eyes like sharpened steel. He led his men to the counter and ordered 12 coffees, black. Clara smiled faintly, her hand steady despite the heat of the urn. "Yes, sir," she said softly. But when she turned to pour, his eyes caught something, a glint of silver at her wrist, a bracelet, not jewelry but a piece of dog-tag chain, engraved faintly with the word valor. He frowned. That word wasn't common, not outside classified operations. "Where'd you get that, ma'am?" he asked. She hesitated, just a breath too long. "Old friend," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly, but something in his gut twisted. He'd seen that same engraving before, on the wrist of a decorated combat medic from the siege of Darren Pass, the woman whose heroism had saved an entire tank crew, including his brother. He stared at her, realization dawning like dawn breaking through smoke. "Wait," he breathed. "You're Captain Hayes." The canteen went still. Cups stopped midair. Clara's hands froze over the counter. It had been years since anyone called her that name. "I don't go by that anymore," she said softly. But Daniel was already standing at attention, his men following suit, confusion rippling through the room. He stepped forward, his voice firm but reverent. "Ma'am," he said, "you're the reason my brother made it out alive. You dragged 3 men from a burning carrier under fire. You're the legend from Darren Pass." Whispers filled the air. Soldiers who had once brushed past her now stared with awe and disbelief. Clara felt her throat tighten. She hadn't wanted this, the attention, the ghosts. She just wanted to serve in silence, to give these young soldiers a warm drink before their missions. "Those days are behind me," she murmured. "Heroes didn't always come home?" Her voice broke on the last word. But Daniel didn't move. Slowly, he removed his cap, placed it over his heart, and turned to his men. "Attention!" he commanded. Every soldier in the canteen snapped to posture. Boots together, backs straight. Silence thick as the air before a storm. And then Daniel saluted. It wasn't casual or symbolic. It was deep, deliberate, the kind reserved for those who'd earned eternal respect. Clara blinked, tears stinging her eyes. The last time someone saluted her, it was beside a flag-draped coffin. The room held its breath. Some of the younger recruits looked confused, others overcome. A few quietly raised their hands to their brows in solidarity. Outside, the wind carried the low hum of the returning convoy, but inside, it was still. The kind of stillness that speaks louder than sound. Clara finally spoke, her voice trembling. "You don't have to do that," she said. Daniel lowered his hand but kept his gaze steady. "With respect, ma'am, we do. You taught us what courage looks like, even if you tried to hide it." And for the first time in years, Clara smiled fully. Not the polite curve of her lips, but a smile that reached the heart she'd kept locked away. She looked around at the young faces, men and women who hadn't even been born when she fought her battles. And something in her shifted. Maybe she hadn't retired after all. Maybe she just found a new way to serve. She stepped out from behind the counter and extended her hand. "Then let's make sure you never forget what that word means," she said, tapping the bracelet marked Valor. That night, after the base quieted, Clara walked home under the orange glow of street lamps. The salute replayed in her mind. Not for pride, but for peace. She paused by the memorial wall, tracing the names she once knew. "Looks like they still remember us," she whispered, and for the first time she didn't feel invisible. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes it comes wearing a soldier's salute. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Whispered Words for more stories of courage, compassion, and the quiet heroes among us. Because sometimes the strongest warriors serve behind the counter, and the world never even knows.